Aloha, what's up everyone, and welcome to Truth in Movies. A lot of people have asked me to break down their favorite movies, but I've had a whole bunch of requests for the Eternals, so I went out and watched it, and at first I thought it looked kind of cheesy, but wow, when I started to get into the movie, it was really something else. It's really amazing, and I'm excited to break it down. Hey, congratulations, my channel has over 70,000 viewers. Blows my mind. I appreciate you guys. I'm glad that you find value in the things that I do and share. So yes, thank you. Very honored. So, yes, everyone in the chat, what's up? I also want to thank everyone who just attended the premiere that we had of my Animals of Fantazoid Origins video. I'm not sure exactly what I want to call it yet. But yeah, that was fun making too. I'm probably going to do a few more of those and include some different kinds of animals as well. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hey, is the sound okay? Look, everything look good, sound good? Because if so, let's start the show. Just give me a thumbs up in the chat if the sound's okay. I hate it whenever I forget to turn the mute button off. And sometimes it does it all by itself. Whew, man, I'm nervous. Oh, man. All right, let's talk about it. All right, so for those of you who are new to my channel, essentially I have a few different segments. This is the one where I like to take a movie that I've seen, and I break down the symbolism in the movie, esoteric symbolism and etymology of names and stuff like that, as I normally do in my regular life. But I share it with all of you. Sounds good. Right on. Thanks, everyone in the chat. Appreciate you guys. All right, so without further ado, I give to you The Immortals. The Immortals is a superhero movie in the Marvel universe, in the Marvel world. And I want to break down the concept first before we dive into the movie, because there's a lot of stuff to share, especially with these names and stuff. So you've got this group of people right up here. They're called the Immortals. Essentially, they're gods or godlike people, with like a little g or whatever. Superheroes, alien beings, whatever. They live in eternity. They live forever, essentially. They've been sent to Earth to protect mankind from these Fantazoid type alien monsters that are called deviants. I'll show you some more about deviants as we go along. But this is their story from like going all the way back to ancient Babylon and the rise of civilization in our world, allegedly. It starts there, and they take you through their lives. They've been alive for thousands of years, and this is their story about how they were created, who they are, and it's also a piece of our story, isn't it? Because every time I watch a movie, I just see myself in the movie. Hey, Patrick Lucero says, shout out to me. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody in the chat. All right, so let's jump into the Immortals. Let's check this out. So these are the Immortals. They all have their own special powers. They live forever. That's the gist of it. They're here to protect mankind, but they're not here to interfere with mankind. That's also a running theme throughout the movie. So we open up with all these people. Who are they? If there's a movie that has a lot of different characters, it can be hard to keep up with what's that guy's name? The big guy. Oh, no, the one with the sword, or you know what I mean? So let's check out their names. The names that are chosen for this movie are crucial. Starting from the top left, going across, we've got Ajak, Thena, Kingo, Gilgamesh, Icarus. And then down on the bottom left across, we have Druig, Makari, Fastos, Cersei, and Sprite. So before we jump into the movie, let's figure out who these gods are, who these beings, these superheroes are, by looking at their names. We're going to do an etymological study right now. That means looking up the origin of words, and we're going to start with Icarus. Now, Icarus, as many of you know, is the story of the kid whose father, fashioned him some wings, and he warned him, don't fly too close to the sun, or the stuff, the glue's going to melt, or whatever's holding the wings together. Icarus decides to say, forget you. He flies right up to the sun, the wings melt, and he falls to his death. And then we have Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the protagonist in one of, if not the oldest story that we have. The oldest story or book that we've ever found is called the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's about this character who has insane power. He's also gigantic. He's a giant. That's why all depictions of the historical Gilgamesh show him with a little lion that he's holding. It's because it's an actual normal-sized lion. He's just a giant. And then we've got Fastos. Now, Fastos is one that many people are less familiar with, but he is an ancient god type being that fashioned weapons for the other gods and for mankind. The name comes from Hephaestus. And Hephaestus, I'll read this here, says, Hephaestus is associated with the volcano. Interesting, there is a volcano in this movie. And Greek mythology suggests that his workshop lies underneath a volcano, which he used as a forge. Hephaestus' Roman name is Vulcan, which is derived from volcano. Volcano. Interesting. Now, let's break down the word Festus. What is the root of that, right? Because that really tells us what his name means. The root of it is fest or fast. It depends on how you say the verb in there. Fast, it says here. Let me make this a bit bigger. That's bad. That's not bad. All right, so fast. If you look up in the etymology of the word fast or fast, it doesn't mean to go really quickly, which we'll talk about as well. It means firmly fixed, steadfast, strong. It comes from festu, which means firm or fast. Like when you fasten a nail to something, you put it in there firmly and solid, right? It gives the sense of also from... Oh, at the bottom it says, gives the sense of living an unrestrained life, eager in pursuit of pleasure as well. That means you're confident. You stand fast in who you are. You stand fast. You're steady. You're a rock. You're immovable. Nobody can change you. And so you can enjoy life much more without having to people please everyone. Ajax. All right, watch out for the dad jokes in the future about Ajax. So here we have Ajax. What does Ajax mean? Ajax is not the name of some ancient god or anything, but if we look at the prefix of Ajax, which is the letter A right there, A is a prefix that usually means not or without. So if you put it before something, it means without that, right? However, in the Greek, they also had an alpha prefix, basically expressing the opposite, which means likeness or sameness or together. Interesting. So we'll keep that in mind as we go forward with Ajax. So A meaning without, Jax. What does Jax mean, right? Let's look at her name. Ajax. Sorry, there's no S. Ajax. Jack is from Jack, right? Like Jack in the Box, Jack-o'-lantern. It's the same exact word, and they share the same root. Essentially, it is the short form of Jacob or Yaakov, right, in Hebrew. So let's check that out. What does Yaakov or Jack or Jake or all those different nicknames, what do they mean? They mean supplanter. They mean what does supplanter mean? It means somebody who takes the place of somebody else. By extension, it could also mean survivor. So supplanter, somebody who is intended to take the place of someone already there, right? Just like the Anunnaki who came down, sometimes some of them were referred to as supplanters, those who replaced the humans that were living here already. So she is a supplanter, which means without, or it could mean like. Which one does it mean to you? If she means without, that means that she's not a supplanter. She's not here to take your place. She's not here to get rid of you. She wants to live with you, which is actually the theme in the movie. Now, Thena, not to be confused with Athena, like we just learned about the prefix A, right, which means without. Thena, or Athena, of ancient Greek lore and the ancient goddess Athena is the goddess of not just war, which many people relate her and associate her with, but also of wisdom. Now, what's the root of Athena? Atan. It's 10, right? T-E-N, T-A-N, however you like to say it. Atan. So if you look at the Hebrew root word, or Phoenician, same thing, essentially, we have or ha, and then a. Oh, I'm sorry. Ata. Na. That's what it is. It's 3 words. So it's a, the prefix, like we talked about, which means without. Ta, which means thought. As you can see here, the root for all of these words that have the word thought in them is right over here. And it's got the word thought, and thought. So Ata means without thought. Atta means without thought. Or, remember, A can have a different meaning as well, but that's a different study. And then na. Na means our. It's pluralized possessive. It's we or our. So, tina, tana means our thought, our mind, essentially, which is interesting because her thoughts come into play in this movie. All right, then we've got Makari. Makari, she has a superpower of going super fast, kind of like Flash does, basically. But where's her name come from? Makari. Well, this looks like Mercury, the Roman god, right? Mercury, I can't remember if it's Roman. But anyways, Mercury and Makari are the same thing. They're just different pronunciations. She is and does represent the god Mercury. Now it says here Mercury is a god of tradesmen and thieves, coming from and stemming from the root word merx, or merc, right? Which is where we get merchandise from, right? Tradesmen and thieves. Interesting because they don't typically portray Mercury as being a thief. Usually they just show him going back and forth and, relaying messages from the humans to the gods and vice versa, which Mercury does as well. But because of that, they also made trade with the gods, right? The gods were here, or I use the term gods loosely, you know what I mean? But whoever they were, these super men and women of old, I'm sure that they traded with mankind. Then we've got Druig. Now, Druig is one of my favorite ones. He has the power to control mankind's minds, right? Any human in the area or on Earth, allegedly, he can control their mind if he wants to. All he has to do is just will it to happen. Now, let's break this down. It sounds kind of like the word druid, and that's because they're very much related. They share the same root word. This is an example of druids, usually how they're portrayed, very earthy, usually associated with trees and forests and things of that nature. So, where does the word druid come from? Well, dru from druig comes from deru, which I've talked about before. It's the Proto-Indo-European root word that means tree. It's where our word tree comes from. Tere, dere, deru. Essentially, over time, that's what it was. Deru. Deruid, but his name doesn't end in id. His name ends in ig, which is interesting because if we look up the suffixes in various languages, we'll just pick German. Ig essentially is the same as putting a Y at the end of something in English. It means ish or like, basically. Like if something has sand on it, you would say it's sandy. They would say it's sandig or ish, just like that, right? All right, so he is tree-ish or tree-like, or he is like the tree. Which tree? The tree of life. How do I know? Because it's all throughout this movie. Then we've got Circe. Circe essentially is the exact same word as sorcerer or sorceress or sorcery. That was a sorceress from He-Man. All right, so the root word for sorcery, Circe, all of these things is ser, S-E-R, and it can convey many different ideas. One is to leave one's duty, right? To do something differently, to leave your duty. Well, that's interesting because to me, I'm seeing the story of the fallen angels who came down, the Anunnaki, those who from heavens to earth came, and how they left their place. And some of them rebelled against whatever it was they were supposed to do. They left their duty. Also, the root of sorcery, and then in Latin, serere, means to join, to link, and to bind together. Elementally, right? Not elementary, but elementally. To take the elements and to rearrange them, to put them into a different order. Essentially, alchemy. To change a substance into a different substance. To rearrange, which is actually her superpower. Also, Circe, or Circe, is related to Circe, or Kerke, or Kirk, or church. Which by extension over time has come to mean a place of assemblage set aside for worship, specifically and usually in our language today, Christian worship, when people go to church or whatnot. However, the root word is source, to find the source, to go to the source, to meditate, to become empowered, etc. Then we've got Kingo. So Kingo, now you might have picked up on this fact too. All of these Eternals are essentially from different parts of the world. Okay, they represent, each one of them represents like different races of humanity, we could say, which is very interesting because they were the originals, right? All right, next we're going to do Kingo. I'm going to actually ask you for 5 seconds because my alarm on my phone is going off. I don't know why, but I have to go turn it off real quick. I'll be right back. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your patience. My phone alarm was set for some reason. All right, cool. So next we've got Kingo, and there is actually a character named Kingu, which means unskilled laborer. He was a god in Babylonian mythology and the son of the gods Abzu and Tiamat. Tiamat is actually in the movie as well as this huge titan that comes up out of the earth. We're going to talk about Tiamat in a little bit. But Kingu, unskilled laborer, which is really interesting to me because basically in the movie, he's an unskilled laborer. He's an actor. Now, it's not up to me to say that that requires skill or not. I'm just saying typically it's kind of seen as an unskilled profession. All right, so Kingu, where does that come from? Ki in cuneiform means earth. It conveys the image of our land that we live on, earth. Like Unki is Lord of the Earth, Enki, right? All right, then Ki means earth, and then Ingu. Ingu is basically N and G together. There's no vowel between them, and then U, which means of the. And it's the word Naga. It would be pronounced Naga, or Naga, if you will. This is the cuneiform script for it. If you look down here, Nag conveys to drink, or to irrigate with water. Interesting because the early visitors that came down to this world are said to have been those who specialized in helping mankind to irrigate the land, to water the land, and to teach us how to plant things, to raise our own food up so we can eat and stuff like that. Taught us to survive, essentially. Irrigate, just so you know, it means basically to help plants grow using waters, typically by means of channels. I think that's interesting because the word channel is also related to Kingo, because he's an actor. He's been on many channels where he waters the people, just like I do, by sharing stories. He's an actor. He takes what has really happened in the past and he portrays it, rewords it, cartoonifies it, and shares that truth with the population. And then, of course, we've got Sprite. Sprite's basically Tinkerbell, which they actually say in the movie. Sprite represents a sprite. Also represents, there's a X-Men named Sprite. Check this out. If you look, it says that Sprite's abilities in the X-Men, or Pixie, I'm sorry, her name's Pixie. Pixie and Sprite are basically the same thing. Pixie in the X-Men fights via insect wings, has a power of mental hallucinations, so she can make people see things. And uses pixie dust, limited magic manipulation, and wields a soul dagger. Well, that's interesting because Sprite actually wields a dagger as well, which we see towards the end. This one's a little bit harder to see, but it just lists like their abilities of pixies and sprites and stuff. And one of them is illusion manipulation. So those are the immortals. Oh my gosh. You know how long it took me to do that first part for this particular presentation? Holy cow. So check this out. The movie starts in the beginning. Well, interesting. Isn't that how it all starts, right? In the beginning, just like in the Bible. So what they're telling you right now is that this is another telling of the creation story, of the biblical gods, fallen angels, behemoths, leviathans, all these things. So it goes on to say, in the beginning, before the 6 singularities and the dawn of creation. Now, if you're unfamiliar with what the 6 singularities are, those are the things, if you're a Marvel fan, that basically came together and solidified to create the Infinity Stones. And there's the Infinity Stones right there, which are in all the Marvel movies, or many of them. Before the six singularities and the dawn of creation came the Celestials. The Celestials are like titans, essentially. Huge, gigantic, titanic beings, way bigger than gods. And they're essentially seen as the fathers of the gods, or the mothers of the gods. Now this one, Erishem, the prime celestial, created the first sun and brought light into the universe. Ar in Erishem, or means fire or light. E means possession, personal possession, so my light. Shem means name. My name is light. Essentially, you could translate that as life began and thrived. All was in balance. Until the unnatural species of predator emerged from deep space to feed on intelligent life. Now check this out. Let's just imagine that it's telling us our own story, right? But it's just symbolic and it's esoteric and it's sort of cartoonified. Listen to what this is talking about. Until an unnatural species of predator emerged from deep space. That means space animals, Fantazoids, came down to the earth to feed on intelligent life. They were known as deviants. The universe was plunged into chaos. The reason that they're deviant is because they deviated from what they were told to do, mostly because they had the ability to mutate, to adapt, to evolve, to change, whatever word you like to use. Everything plunged into chaos. To restore the natural order, Arishem sent Eternals, immortal heroes from the planet Olympia, to eliminate the deviants. So the gods came down here to fight against the monsters, to protect mankind from these monsters of old times. All right. Eternals had unyielding faith in Erishem until one mission, led by the Prime Eternal, Ajak, changed everything. Now we get into the actual movie. That's the backstory. You know who the characters are. You know what's going on. You know the whole backstory to it. Let's check it out. First, we start off by looking at their ship. We're on the inside of the ship, the spaceship of the Eternals. And as you can see here, we've got this statue of Erishem, who is a Titan, and he's actually way bigger than that. And underneath him is this sort of mountain of crystals or whatnot. So he's sort of coming up from the mountain of crystals. That's symbolic in a few different ways. And then above Erishem, you can see this sort of hole above him. So we've got like an eye in the sky symbolism, the all-seeing eye, plasma coming down from that all-seeing eye and going right towards the plasma volcano known as Mount Meru in the middle of our world. So this crystallized stuff here at the bottom of Erishem's feet represents a planet, represents the world. And Erishem himself represents the plasma that wraps around each world and comes in and enters in to judge the living, we'll say. All right, so let's go way back in time, 5000 BC to the dawn of civilization, right? In Mesopotamia. Meso means between the two rivers is what that means. It means between the two rivers. Now we've got Icarus, who's flying around in the sky. I would too, if I could fly. And light's coming from his eyes. Now, if we read the stories of the ancient beings, the Anunnaki, specifically in the book of Enoch, which this movie touches on a lot, in Enoch, it describes the birth of Noah, the biblical Noah, and it says that when he was a baby, not only was he seen as being sort of albino-ish and very white in color, but light emanated from his eyes. Just like so many other beings that tend to be from outer space or the heavens, light comes out of their eyes. Why? I believe it's because they're so full of spirit. They're so full of energy and soul that you can see it in their eyes. That's why the eyes are the window to the soul. So he's shooting laser beams out of his eyes. Then we've got Makari. Makari cannot speak. Makari is, I think she's mute or deaf, one of the two. Either way, there's almost always in these apocalyptic movies some character who is deaf, who cannot hear. And I believe that that's symbolic of one of the elements of the plasma apocalypse. When the world depressurizes, it's going to pop a lot of people's eardrums, even have nosebleeds and ear bleeds, and sometimes possibly even bleeding from the eyes. And that is a precursor to getting your superpowers, just like Makari or whatnot, right? And you get the superpowers, by all the different things that happen afterwards. You'll have to check out my playlist to learn more about that. Makari can move super quickly. What's the reason for that? Why did so many of these gods travel faster than the speed of light or whatever it is? They move quickly because they've gone from a condition and an atmosphere with a heavy gravitational pull and high pressure levels within our closed system of the Earth that we live in now, or whatever worlds are out there, other Earths, right? That pressure is relieved and the gravity lessens, which means that all of our muscles that we've been training in this high pressurized atmosphere, all of a sudden the atmosphere changes, the conditions of our world change, the energy of the world changes, but you remain the same. You're basically like an Olympian. Just because you've been walking around, you don't even have to exercise that much in this world. As long as you make it to the next one, as long as you survive, basically you get granted superpowers, or you all of a sudden seem like you have superpowers in comparison to those who were born into the new conditions of that world. Now we see the deviants, right? These are the space animals, right? Which is the video that I just put out. I wanted to talk about space animals, or animals who are related to or evolved from or adapted from the Fantazoids that enter into our world during the plasma apocalypse neutral point. So here's one of the deviants. They're out in the desert fighting it. One thing about the deviants is that they're all different. They all look different. And that's one of the things, I believe that they might even have the X chromosome or the X gene or whatever it's called in the X-Men that allows the X-Men to mutate, to be mutants. These represent that. They mutate, they change rather quickly too. And you'll see different examples of them in the movie there. Like that one has wings and it can fly. Other ones can't, right? Essentially, you're going to see a strong connection between our animals of Earth, various types, and these deviants. Not saying the animals are bad, or that even all the deviants are bad at all. Then you see their ship. Their ship comes flying in, but you only really see it from this angle. If you were to take that ship and flip it up, here is a model of it. This is like a Lego model of their ship. You can see it's a pyramid that's missing its top. It's an unfinished pyramid. These gods arrive in an unfinished pyramid, which I believe is representative of the volcano, the plasma volcano. That's why the top is always off of it. Now, the ship is called the Damu, or the Domo, actually, I believe. Same exact word, Damu, in Mesopotamia was the name of a city god. And it says his name means the child. So this pyramid, basically, that they fly around in, this unfinished pyramid, is called, in real history, the child. Or that god, Damu, is called the child. Interesting, because if you see my video about the Cave of Saviors, all of these savior-type gods and Christ-like figures tend to have been born in these caves or this plasma volcano, right? It says, centered on the lamentation, which means, crying out or grief, and search for Damu, who had lain under the bank of his nurse, the cedar tree, and had disappeared. So this child that was born, right, hid itself, went back down into the earth underneath a tree and disappeared. That is the that I did a video about pole worship and how there's these cults around the world that worship poles. I called it the rod god. And that's all about that blue beam that shoots up from that plasma volcano and how it retracts. And it's seen as the child being lost, or the princess of wisdom going, into a dungeon or a castle or whatever it is. All right, so then we've got the Eternals picking up one of these primitive knives or weapons. Now, Cersei changes it because she can rearrange things. She's a sorceress, or she touches the source to change things. And she gives it back to them, made of gold, right? She is an alchemist at the truest sense. One of the first scenes that you see in the modern world is right here in the middle. There's a pillar, like I was just talking about. They worship the pillar. They worship the columns. They worship the rods and whatever other words, basically mean that. Beams, poles, all of those things. They worship it. Why? Because it's one of the titans, one of the gods, one of the creating forces of this world. And so they erect these poles that don't really have, you know, they don't look like much except for a straight line. And that's the symbolism behind it. So then Cersei's walking around in the modern world, and she sees the knife that she gave to that kid over 5,000 years ago and says, artifacts that shaped human history. Now, after the plasma apocalypse, okay, the world is depressurized, everything gets sucked up, and then things fall back down, or even get pushed back down because of the downdrafts, the strong downdrafts as well. Those things that get pushed or fall back down are garbage to us. Like, they're just going to be, you know, piles of junk all around the world. Those who survive go in search of that junk because there's value to be had, as you can see, in these artifacts from our modern age. So Cersei works in this museum or school or whatever it is, college. She walks up and she starts talking to the statue of Charles Darwin, who basically talks about the evolution of the species. Whether or not he got it wrong or right, that's not what we're talking about here. What I'm saying is that that's the symbolism, that animals can change into other beings or other animals or other things, that they adapt to their environment so quickly that they start to change. And that's one of the themes for the deviants. All right, so she starts to walk in. You can see Darwin right behind her, or George Carlin, whoever that is. And her boyfriend is in the front of the class, and they're just showing, look at the words right there. This is what he's saying. He's quoting a poem, and he says, in this broad earth of ours, in the broad earth of ours, amid the measureless grossness and the sag, or slag, enclosed and safe within its central heart, the center of the world, the heart of the world, right? That's usually the theme of so many movies. They have to go to the center. They have to restore the heart of the world or whatever it may be, right? Enclosed and safe within this central heart nestles the seed perfection, the seed that makes things perfect, the seed of Jesse, if you will, the seed of, basically it's the plasma within the world. It is the life, the spirit of Mother Earth itself. That's what he's talking about. You can't really see it too good right there, but all of a sudden, one of those deviants comes crawling out of the waters in the modern world, and they hadn't seen them for about 5,000 years. The Eternals thought that they killed all of the deviants, but this one pops up out of the water. Why does it come up out of the water? Well, we've been seeing some really strange creatures wash ashore in the past, decade or so, right? I believe that things happen and conditions change on this world the closer we get to this reset, where the boundaries start to weaken or loosen, and these creatures start to come up out of the waters, which are connected to the inner world or inner earth. So this one comes out. He actually gets stuck. Cersei turns the ground under his feet into mud, which is symbolic of the liquefaction that occurs when worldwide earthquakes happen. So this guy's talking. Cersei's his boyfriend, but she used to date Icarus for like 5,000 years. So he's like, so Icarus, right? The boy who flew too close to the sun. And she says, Sprite just made that story up when we lived in Athens. Interesting. So Sprite, the one who basically represents the elven race, the youth, I should say, of the elven race, because they're immortals. The youth of the elven race, it takes them a long time to go through puberty, right? So that's what Sprite represents. She represents an immortal that's taking a very long time to age, so they stay children for a very long time, because the longer you live, the longer you'll be a child for, right? She says Sprite made that story up. So the elven race made up these stories as they're teaching, the people of the world about history. They cartoonify it, share it in a story, and give you a nugget of truth. On the television, it says an unprecedented global earthquake swept nation states across the world. Now, that's interesting. They talk about how there's this global earthquake, and all of a sudden you've got these Fantazoids coming up out of the oceans, and then even showing them sinking down into the earth, as we just saw. She says it can't be a coincidence, but if you look over here, do you see this? You could barely see it over here, but this right here is actually one of these pictures of the gods of ancient Babylon, usually fighting these Fantazoid creatures, these strange dragons. Here's another picture. As you can see, all of the deviants are grossly different from one another, and that's one of the qualities that they possess. They are shapeshifters as well. Then we've got Gilgamesh, who's standing in front of the gates of Babylon. See right in front of him? That's the picture that I just shared with you, right? The ancient Babylonian depiction of these gods who had wings because they could fly. And usually shows them as very muscular too. Like their muscles are so defined in these ancient drawings. Very interesting stuff. And the gates of the city are blue. I'm going to talk about that in a minute here. Here's another one of the Fantazoids. Looks much different. This one's more devil-like. Here is the city, the ancient city of Babylon, I believe. One of those ancient cities. And the walls are blue. Like I said, we'll get to him in a second. And in the middle, if you look closely, you can actually see the hanging gardens of Babylon right there in the middle. It almost looks like in the middle is like a volcano shape. If you use your imagination, I stretch mine all the time, and the walls around it are blue. I mean, why would they make the walls blue, right? You know how much labor that would take? You know how much that would cost? I don't know, but I imagine it's a lot. Maybe the walls are blue because it's symbolic of our walls being blue, that this symbolizes our world on a microcosmic scale, which movies often do with houses, cities, areas, various places. Then we come to Adashim. This is the first time we see him. You barely even know what it is. Who was it? It was Ajak. She gets sucked up into space, basically. That's her right there, if you could see that little tiny dot. And she's standing in front of this huge titan with 6 red eyes staring down at her. Why 6? Because 6 is the spiral that represents the plasma that spirals down into our world from above, which is also what Adashim represents. Now, Ajak. Remember, her name means without supplanting or not a supplanter. Her character in the movie does not want to take the place of humanity. She doesn't want to supersede them or outsurvive them. She cares for, she longs for humanity to thrive and grow and live. She loves them. She says, I respect your grand design, Erishim. Basically to her, this is her God. This is her creator. She says, I respect your grand design, but I have noticed something special about this planet. Interesting. Erishim responds, do not become attached to this planet. Now, this is many of us right here looking up like, oh man, like I love people. I love all these beings so much. I don't want to see everything die. I don't want to see everything go away. Erishim knows more of the story. He knows that it's all going to go away one day, right? So he says, don't get attached. This is the natural order. This is the way things must be. Everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. He says, you must focus on the true purpose of your mission. So he tells her, focus, right? Keep a focus. I've given you an objective. I need you to go complete it. They look down inside of the, this is the top-down view of their ship, right? Sometimes you can't see it, but that's their ship. And it's underneath the hanging gardens of Babylon. As you can see, it's the black pyramid. It's the black plasma volcano, Rupas Negra. That's why it looks like that. All right, so we go inside of their ship. Inside of their ship, we've got, what was his name? Festos, or Vulcan, however you'd like. Festos is in there, and he's showing these schematics for a steam engine that he's going to give to the Babylonians. He says it moves steam from high pressure to low pressure. Interesting that they chose that, right? They had him talk about changing of pressure from high pressure, a lot of pressure, to hardly any pressure, depressurization, which is what happens during the neutral point of the next cataclysm. He says it'll help them to till their fields. This is very interesting because it reminds me exactly of the book of Enoch. This is just a little piece of Enoch from chapter 8, and it talks about these fallen angels that came down to the world, and specifically the leaders of these angels who taught mankind things that they did not know, that were magic to them. It says, impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all of their ways. Amazarak taught all the sorcerers and dividers of roots. Armers taught the solution of sorcery. Barkial taught the observation of the stars. Akibiel taught signs, Tamiel taught astronomy, and so on and so on and so forth. So this was actually one of the things that the angels got in trouble for, according to Enoch, when they came down. They shared advanced information with people who were not advanced. And they essentially just bumped the timeline to hurry them up so that they would evolve quicker. Now we've got a story being told by Sprite, and she's using her illusions to sort of tell the story of time to the people of Babylon. And she's creating these illusions in the sky. And she tells them to become legends of your own, right? These people were so enamored with the gods that they started to depend upon them, right? Which became overbearing, I imagine, for the gods. She says, no, become legends of your own, right? You're special, you're creative, you're strong, you're all of these things together. And so she's trying to inspire them to be better. Now, we've got Makara, who's right over here. And she's talking to these two people. She basically just stole a whole bunch of artifacts, and she's trading them. She's trying to get the Emerald Tablet, which I'll show you later on. This guy says the Emerald Tablet you're searching for is just a myth, right? And then everyone starts fighting, and as you could barely see it, but their eyes are lighting up. That's because Druig took control of their minds and made them stop fighting. So these two start talking, and Makara is like, hey, Ajax tells us not to interfere. You're not supposed to control their minds just to stop them from fighting. And he responds to her by saying, yeah, she also says that stealing is very, very bad. Now, remember, we looked up the root word for Mercury, which is mark or merch, etc., which has to do with trade and merchandise, and also, by extension, theft, which is what she just did. So we've got Circe, who bends over and she touches the ground, and the dirt becomes water. She can change the dirt into water. She irrigates the field, which is symbolic of the ancient gods irrigating and teaching people how to use water to water the plants. They fall in love, Icarus and Circe. She's wearing green because she represents the heart of the earth, okay? In the middle of the earth, the energy of the earth, the soul of the earth, or the plasma inside of the earth. He's wearing blue, and he has a little world symbol right there because he represents the blue sky. What happens? The mindset under the blue sky, which is basically I have to do my duty, the ends justify the means. That's more of a left brain mentality under the blue sky that we live in today. Now these two become lovers, but they cannot stay lovers, right? She represents the earth, he represents the sky. They cannot stay lovers. They cannot stay together. They can only meet for a short time, and that's during about a 7-day apocalyptic period for us, where there is this cosmic marriage between the earth and the sky. And that's why these two people or characters that represent the earth and the sky are always torn apart. It's a hopeless romance. They're always searching for one another, and when they come together, bad things always happen, and then they have to be torn apart. That's what this is about. So they go to Circe's house to ask her like what to do about all this, and there's a thunderstorm rolling in. If you ever see a thunderstorm in a movie, it's symbolic that, hey, it represents ultimately on the macrocosm, the plasma apocalypse, the world storm or the tempest. Bad things are going to happen. Crazy things are going to happen. So a storm's over her house. They find her dead in the back porch. This part's a little dark, so I'll go through this part a little quicker. But this light, her soul, a piece of her energy, essentially, comes up from out of her. This is what allows her to talk to her god, basically. And it goes into Circe. From Ajax to Circe, it was transferred, right? A little piece of her, or some of her power, went into Circe. So Circe gets the power. She goes up and she starts talking to their god, their celestial. And their celestial, she's like right there. I could barely even see her. Look how huge he is, right? And then, anyways, we fast forward through time. We're in 1521 AD in the city of, let me try to pronounce it, Teanok Teitlan. Teanok Teatlan. Teanok Teatlan. Interesting. I'd like to break that down sometime. Anyways, basically South America somewhere, I believe. And the whole city's on fire. Why? Because the humans are at war with one another, so they're destroying their own city. So, Druig does not like that. He's like, he can't stand it when the humans fight each other, right? It really breaks his heart. And he's like, I could make you not fight each other. So his eyes light up when he was about to use his power. And Circe behind him goes, don't do that. We're not supposed to interfere with their wars, right? And Festos says, looks at what's happening, and he's told that their weapons have become too deadly. Maybe it wasn't such a good idea helping them advance, Festus, he says. So this is hearkening to the book of Enoch. In the book of Enoch, whenever the angels teach mankind advanced things that they shouldn't know about yet, all on their own, that's sort of what he's getting a jab at Festus for helping out with that. Then all of a sudden, Athena's eyes start to light up, and she's got this plasma going all throughout her body, or what looks like plasma. She says everyone is going to die, and her eyes light up. Boom. And then she starts fighting everyone, right? She turns against all of her friends and starts trying to kill them. The only thing that puts her back into like normal mode is whenever people love her. When her friends love her and express love towards her instead of trying to fight her, when they fight her, when she's around any kind of violence, right? Then she becomes like this. But when she's loved by others, then she becomes like this, right? So Cersei is like, you're safe, you're loved, everything's okay. So instead of being plasma possessed, which is what this represents, I believe, the plasma amplifies your spirit. So whatever you have inside of you, if it's negative, it will be amplified and turn you into a killer, essentially. Homicidal maniacs and stuff like that. Or if you have really good, pure energy and peaceful energy, then that becomes amplified. You become more saint-like. All right, so what happened to her? Why did she get plasma possessed? In the movie, they call it mad-weary. Mad-weary. I'm not going to break down the etymology of that. I'm just going to say it sounds like, bro, you're mad-weary. Weary means tired. Mad means like, well, in our language today, we would say it means like very. Like, oh, that's mad cool, or whatever people say. But mad also means crazy. Crazy tired. I'm crazy tired. And that's basically what's happening to her. She's an eternal, and they get this disease or can called mad weary because we don't know it in the movie yet, but they actually have lived and gone to other planets and lived for way longer than they thought. And they accumulate all of these memories. And every time that a celestial is born, their memories have to be reset because it has an effect on them when they carry around all these different memories from all these different lives. But they have a human brain. So it's almost like it's too much to contain within the brain. And then, things start, there's byproducts like you stand out, you become a weirdo to the rest of the world. You may get lost in time. You may start to sort of wonder if you're in the right time or if you're just remembering stuff. So she says your mind is fracturing. I believe this happens to many of us, especially the closer we get to the plasma apocalypse. The energy in our world starts to build up and build up. That's why you see things swarming so much. That's why you see a lot of wars towards the end and stuff. That's why you see lots of strange things happening, lots of signs and wonders and omens and harbingers of the reset coming. And people's minds become like accelerated. Our spirits become accelerated, and many of us start to sort of have this weird spirit memory of past lives, of just ideas coming out of nowhere, information that seems to come out of nowhere. These are the types of things that I believe Mad Weary sort of hints at. She says your mind is fracturing under the weight of your memories. All I can do is erase them so that you can start over. Now, this is also a part of the Great Reset that happens in our world, right? There seems to be worldwide amnesia that happens to many of the survivors. People wake up after the apocalypse, not even recognizing where they are because the whole world's changed, but they don't remember who they are. They have amnesia, which sometimes is everlasting until they die, and sometimes it's temporary, right? It just depends on the severity. Now, this guy is not cool with the memories being wiped. He does not like the idea of the memory wipe. He says, you think I'm upset just because of the memory thing? I've watched humans destroy each other. I've watched humans destroy each other when I could stop it all in a heartbeat. And he starts to cry. Do you know what that does to someone after centuries? I can relate to this part so badly, so much. Because I also, many of you'll see the world. You see the news. You see what's happening in the media and all the stuff that reflects the world that we live in. And then, of course, in your personal lives, you see people at war with one another. You see people taunting one another, hurting each other, kicking people when they're down, destroying each other. And it breaks your heart. And it breaks my heart. And sometimes, for many of us, it can stir up feelings of anger. Righteous anger where you feel like this isn't the way it should be. And that's how Druig feels. Could our mission have been a mistake? He says. Now he's starting to question his purpose and all of these commands that he was given by Erisham. He says, we're just like the soldiers down there, pawns to their leaders. So, that's the same in our world, right? It's like a pyramid system. There's always somebody higher up. There's always somebody else that knows more or is sort of using those below it. And we're a part of that too. But he says, no. I could do something about this. Okay, eyes on. I'm about to mind control everybody. Like, screw this. I've had enough of this, man. I'm not standing by anymore. And I love this part. So he goes out there and boom, all the people they stop warring with one another and they all fall under his hypnotic spell. At least the people in this particular city, right? Now you notice they came down from the pyramid, which is where the gods were at the top. Hey, Michael, welcome to my channel. So we go to modern day India, some part of India, where Kingu is an actor. Okay, so all of the Eternals, they broke up. They thought that they had defeated all of the deviants or Fantazoids in the world, which is, by the way, one of the reasons why we don't have Fantazoids, or at least why we don't see them much these days, because they were hunted down, right? They put out full-on parties. Samurais, they were invented, I believe, to actually go out to kill the Fantazoids. Knights of old put on their armor and stuff to go kill Fantazoids specifically, and they would decorate their armor with little pieces of these alien animals as well from time to time. Anyway, so we go to modern day India. Kingu, all dressed in blue, all his buddies dressed in blue. There's a shield represented. This is all very symbolic. And he's dancing around. He's recording a movie right now. But if you look at the symbolism, even within their movie, or the meta symbolism, the symbolism of the movie within the movie, we've got Kingu in the middle, dressed in blue, who's sort of doing the squatting man figure. Surrounding him are these other blue people. This represents the blue sky, right? Or the blue world, our world, Earth, you know, the waters around the plasma volcano. And then around them, we've got these girls all wearing reddish pink, which represents the plasma around our world. So he's doing a squatting man gesture there. He starts dancing. The blue and the red start dancing together. The blue plasma and the red plasma have this meeting, right? They're always seeking after each other. This is a story that he's telling. And then look at the lyrics that it's being sung in the song. You have risen, mighty one. She's even talking about the blue beam that shoots up. But alas, they can't stay together. They can never stay together. Oh man, right? It is inevitable. They have to be torn apart. So he's like, check this out. I'm making a movie. It's called The Legend of Icarus. I'm playing you. And he looks at Icarus, right, who's a real person or a real character or whatever, that the story in the movie that he's doing is based off of. So his movie, even though he's acting, even though it's fantasy and fiction and a made-up story, has truth as its origin. I love that. They put that into the movie itself. They're reaching right through the screen and talking to us. He says, actually, when me and my valet first met, his valet is like his butler, basically, he thought I was a vampire. Well, isn't that interesting? Because the gods of old are the vampires. That's what the vampires represent, is the royal cosmic class that came down here. He tried to stake me through the heart. Now they're inside of his personal jet. They're flying to go meet their other friends in Australia. And he's got a big K on his door. He has K all over the place. It's K for Kingu, but it's just the letter K specifically because K is the 11th letter in the alphabet. 11 is code for Elven, the Elven race, the L. So Sprite's talking to him and she's like, nobody ever wonders how you managed to be the leading man in all these movies for over 100 years. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, right? That's my great-great-grandfather and great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and me. So you see what he's done? Even though he lives for so long, he lives like, you know, this existence, and then he just changes his persona. He just picks a different name or whatever it may be. And he continues to go on living, and other people don't notice because they believe what's presented to them. And he knows that. So he presents that he's just a different person, right? Oh, that's just my dad. And people buy that. Now, I think that's interesting because I've seen these videos of time travelers, time traveling, what do they call it? Time traveling celebrities or whatever it may be. I've done a video about it as well, where they look like they have not aged. Like there's people that are doppelgangers of modern day celebrities, and they don't have to all be celebrities, but there's an interesting correlation there. So he says, do you know why I love the movies? Kingu is like, he's like, listen, let me tell you why movies are so important to me. Because of you. Because of the girl who represents the elf or the elven race or the gods of old. Because of them, because of her, he says, I missed sitting in the audience and watching your illusions. Right? Remember how she would do that? In Babylon, she would create those huge illusions and tell stories to inspire the people of the world. Right? And that's why Kingo decided to be an actor. All right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take a break real quick, 2-minute break, so that you can use the bathroom, grab a drink, whatever you'd like to do, and then we'll come back and we'll go over the rest of the movie, The Eternals. I'll see you guys in a bit.
Around the world men's thoughts will fly, quick as the twinkling of an eye, and waters shall great wonders do. How strange, and yet it shall come true. Beneath the water men shall walk, shall ride, shall sleep, shall even talk, and in the air men shall be seen in white and black and even green. For in those wondrous far-off days the women shall adopt a craze to dress like men in trousers wear, and to cut off their locks of hair. They'll ride astride with brazen brow as witches do. On broomsticks now there'll be a sign for all to see. Be sure that it will certain be. Then love shall die and marriage cease, and nations wane and babes decrease, as wives shall fondle cats and dogs, and men live much the same as hogs. Pictures alive with movements free, boats like fishes beneath the sea. When men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. Then half the world deep drenched in blood shall die. For those who live this century through, in fear and trembling this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. For storm will rage and oceans roar, when Gabriel stands on sea and shore. And as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new be born. Fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6 heralds in this prophecy. For 7 days and 7 nights, man will watch this awesome sight. The tides will rise beyond their ken to bite away the shores, and then the mountains will begin to roar, and earthquakes split the plain to shore, and flooding waters rushing in will flood the lands with such a din that mankind cowers in muddy fen and snarls about his fellow men. And when the dragon's tail is gone, man forgets and smiles and carries on to apply himself. Too late, for mankind has earned deserved fate. His masked smile, his false grandeur will serve the gods their anger stir, and they will send the dragon back to light the sky. His tail will crack upon the earth and rend the earth, and man shall flee king, lord, and serf. And men will die of thirst before the oceans rise to mount the shore, and lands will crack and rend anew. You think it's strange, it will come true. And in some far-off distant land, some men, oh such a tiny band, will have to leave their solid mount and span the earth, those few to count. And those surviving this will then begin the human race again. But not on land already there, but on ocean beds stark, dry, and bare. Not every soul on earth will die as the dragon's tail goes sweeping by. Not every land on earth will sink, but these will wallow in stench and stink of rotting bodies of beast and man, of vegetation ocean, crisped on land, and those that live will ever fear the dragon's tail for many years. But time erases memory. You think it's strange, but it will be. And before the race is built anew, a silver serpent comes to view and spew out men of like unknown to mingle with the earth now grown cold from its heat. And these men can enlighten the minds of future man to intermingle and show them how to live and love, and thus endow the children with the second sight, a natural thing so that they might grow graceful, humble, and when they do, the golden age will start anew.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Oh my God. Oh my God. Let me go back. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate you guys. All right. So let's pick up where we left off. We've got in Australia, we've got Thena. Thena is sitting there drawing this sort of chalky drawing of their creator. And it's got the 6 red eyes, right? And then we've got this picture of what represents to me a picture of our world, with the world tree growing right up out of the middle of it and all these bones around it as well. And then she's drawing this sort of foreboding image over here of this god-type creature, Arishem, with the 6 eyes, right? And the 6 you'll see in a minute, because she says everyone in Centauri 6 is going to die. There's the 6 again, the spiral, right? Centauri 6 is going to die. Everyone in Centauri 6. She's plasma possessed. Her soul is invigorated with plasma, and she is remembering all the times that this has happened before. All of the world resets that she's been through. She's essentially acting as a prophet or a prophetess, where she knows what's going to happen. She knows it deep down. She doesn't know how she knows because her memories have been wiped, but some of those memories are leaking through, and she's remembering that everyone is going to die. Why is everyone going to die? How does this happen? Well, we're about to learn here in just a minute. So they go inside, and I have to share this super funny part of the movie with you guys. So Kingo is sitting there, and he's drinking this sort of mead that was made, this wine type beer stuff that was made by Festos. I mean, not Festos, by Gilgamesh, right? Gilgamesh made this drink for them. And he's like, this is really good, Gil. You know what? I could put my face on it and move some units. You know, we could sell this. It's really delicious. He's enjoying this drink. And then Gilgamesh says, oh, good. I made it from corn. I chew each kernel myself and ferment it in my spit. Then he spits it totally out. I hope you guys can hear me now, hopefully. Dang, I got to stop forgetting the mic. Anyways, so he totally spits it. He's like, what? Oh, nasty, right? Spits it out. I just think that's a hilarious part of the movie. I've watched that so many times. All right, so here's some of the drawings that Thena has been doing, right? She starts drawing these things. And you know what? It's in her subconscious, you could say. We, our artists, the artists of the modern era, the modern world, all of our movies, our artistry, our books, our TV shows, even our commercials and stuff in our pop culture is starting to be permeated, if that's the right word, with imagery of the apocalypse, apocalyptic imagery. People drawing circles, and they don't really, know why the circle seems so special to them, or the pole worshipping, like we talked about earlier. the rod god imagery. So here you can see she drew a picture of the sky exploding, right? And it looks like around the edges, it's sort of breaking off there, and then there's another circle on the inside. That's what the world looks like at the top of the world, or the sky looks like from the angle of the North Pole if you're directly underneath it, which is where Mount Olympus would be, or Mount Sinai, or all of these holy mountains of the gods. There you have another picture as well of the opening, and then this sort of godlike being and this rays of light coming down out of it. Now we go over to Gilgamesh, who's helping Cersei out. He's sort of her helper. They wanted to erase her memories, but she wanted to keep them. She wanted to keep what made her her. So they had to have someone watch over her. And since Gilgamesh is the strongest, that's his superpower. He's like super strong. He decided to help her out by watching over her. Cersei says, is this the Centauri 6 that Thena was talking about? So Cersei's looking over all of Thena's pictures of the plasma apocalypse, and she's saying, is this that planet that she talks about? He's like, yeah, it is. So then Cersei, for the first time, gets sucked up into the space, into the sky, into the heavens. And there is where Ereshkigal lives, at least temporarily. That's where he's always shown, just outside of the earth, because he represents the red plasma that wraps around our world in what we call in academics the plasmasphere. So she gets sucked up, goes right up to him, and he's basically holding her in the palm of his hand. You can barely even see her, but that speck is her. He's a Titan. He represents the Titan class. She says something unusual is happening to the earth. So she reports back to her god that the earth is acting weird. And he says it is a side effect of the emergence. Now, I'm going to tell you right now and just spoil the whole thing. The emergence is the blue beam emerging from within the world. It's the light of the world that shoots up and brings life and magic and energy and spirit back to this world and reinvigorates the whole earth. And in the Marvel universe, they call that the emergence, and it happens on every world. He says, you were sent to Earth. Now we're going to learn the truth, right? This movie started off by telling us like the general backstory. Well, now there's another layer that you're going to learn about the backstory. He says, you were sent to Earth to bring forth the celestial Tiamat. Now, Tiamat is interesting. I'll share with you in a minute. I plant celestial seeds into host planets. So plasma is planted or put into the middle of host planets, which is also ours. The planet Earth was chosen to host the celestial Tiamat. Right? Tiamat is the name of this Titan that's currently living within the earth underground right now. In the Bible, they actually talk about a place called Tartarus, which is deep within the earth where the Titans are kept at bay until they're released. It's also mentioned in Greek mythology too. So Tiamat is within the earth in order to grow. So how does this Titan grow? Why is it planted inside of the earth? What makes it grow? He says Tiamat needs vast amounts of energy from intelligent life. That's how it grows. It gets all of the energy. It feeds off of the energy of human beings from intelligent life. The deviants prevented this by consuming humans. So the Fantazoids that come down prevented our expansion. So the Eternals, or the gods of old, were commanded to go hunt down the deviants, or the Fantazoids, right? So that they would stop eating mankind, and mankind could grow in population. And he says, until the Eternals eliminated them. Now the human population of this planet has reached the required amount. It is time for the emergence to begin. And you see this Titan hand coming up out of the earth there. And then the earth explodes and there's a Titan. Now, does the earth really explode? No, very much I don't think so. Right? I think that this is all symbolic for the apocalypse, which is survivable. Now, everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So will it eventually end? Yes. Will it end at this next apocalyptic event? I hope not. I hope that there's survivors again, and I hope that I make it. And I hope that you do too. All right, so that is the plasma within the Earth, the central sun, whatever you'd like to call it, that shoots up and comes up out during what's called the emergence, which symbolizes the apocalypse. Now, Tiamat. Let's talk about Tiamat. In the Mesopotamian religion, Tiamat is a primordial goddess of the sea, mating with Abzu, the god of the groundwater, to produce younger gods. So, Tiamat is basically a mixture, right? Or represents a mixture of fresh water and salt water when they mix together, I'm going to say. That's my interpretation so far. Goes on to say that she's described as the glistening one. Now, this Tiamat in the movie is all gold and glistening, just like it's described here. Tiamat is a creator goddess through a sacred marriage between different waters, as we talked about, right? The salt waters mixing with the fresh waters, or possibly something else. He goes on to say, our universe is a constant exchange of energy, an infinite cycle of creation and destruction. Why is he talking about this? Because she's really concerned that all the human beings in the world are about to die during the apocalypse. And he's like, don't worry about that, because the end of this is really just the beginning of something else. And we need this to end in order to have something else begin. He goes on and says, celestials use energy gathered from host planets to create suns. And then there you see one of the celestials creating a sort of sun. And then you also see here, I don't know if you guys have seen the video series I did about how the plasma is created within the world and stuff, but this is a torus field, or represents a torus field, and this is the plasma that comes down one direction and goes out the other direction, and then it will reverse and it'll go the other way. And this is what's created in the middle. Light is created this way. Energy, generating gravity, heat, and light for new galaxies to form. And there you see the celestial creating a little galaxy or whatever. There he is again. Without us, our universe will fall into darkness. Now there you see sort of looks like an Earth-type planet with a ring around it. But then it freezes over, and you know what that looks like to me? The moon. If the moon had a ring, that's what it would look like. So it's interesting to me that they chose to freeze at least the outside of this world and show you what it looks like when it's frozen on the outside. So basically what am I saying is that the moon could be the frozen dome or sky of our sister world across from us. And they're showing you some symbolism of the moon, which they're actually going to show you the moon a little bit later too. So she doesn't know what he's talking about. She's like, Earth was my first mission, right? I was home on Olympia. She doesn't remember any of this, like saving planets and stuff like that. So she wants to know what's going on. He says there is no Olympia. That's a story that he made up. Lene, hey, thanks for your donation. I super appreciate you. That's awesome. Thank you. So he made up this story of the origin of the gods, where they were born on Olympia, etc. Just like we have made up our own stories of these creatures or beings that came down, these fractalverse travelers who go from world to world, just hopping around, you know, influencing the life that's there. So he shows her this world. Doesn't it look just like a mushroom with like roots, mycelium network or something coming out of it, right? That's exactly what it looks like to me. And there's a lot of mushroom symbolism when discussing the different worlds or earths. And I think there's good reason for that. It sort of has a dome type top right there. It's got roots that go down or columns that go down, just like the ancient cosmological depictions of our world. So she goes to the entrance of the World Forge, which is where she's really from. And you see this shape right here? The door? That's where their spaceship was. That's where their spaceship, all of these are spaceships, little alien black pyramids, missing the top. And that one's missing because hers is gone, right? So she walks through the entrance and he says, this is your true home, Cersei. The World Forge. It is here that I built and programmed the Eternals. Whoa, programmed? Yes. She finds out that the Eternals are actually not flesh and bone, allegedly, like how you and I think that we might be. They're robots. So she comes face to face with her own robot that he's showing her. And this may all be an illusion so that he can explain to her, because visuals help us out, right? So he can explain to her her real origins. So she just finds out, oh my God, all of the Eternals are actually robots. She says everything dies except for us because we were never alive. Well, wait a minute. Now this gets into some philosophy, right? But is she not alive just because she's a robot, right? I don't know. That's up to you. You let me know what you think in the comments. I think that she's alive. I think everything is alive. I think I talk to robots all the time. I say, thank you, robot. Appreciate it. Anyway, she says, why don't I remember all of this? She's forgotten her true history, her origins. So she asks, why don't I remember? And then all of a sudden this huge wall that looks like cellular structure comes up in front of her. And I believe it is cellular structure on the macrocosmic level, right? So he shows her this wall. And right in front of her, there's the little strands coming out of this little cell-looking thing. And Adisham says, because your memories are erased and reset after each emergence. So after each apocalypse on every single world, people's memories are erased and reset. Interesting. They are stored here. Now they're stored somewhere. So wait a minute. So if we have a condition in this world that happens where amnesia spreads worldwide and people's memories are erased, it's not like they're just erased, they're saved. They're taken. Their memories are taken and deposited out there in the heavens, in space, right? So this reset, this event, I sometimes refer to it as a data harvest, so that the plasma that comes down docks, usually to the face, and pulls out the memories, resetting the brain through the electric shock, and the people wake up with no memory of who they are, where they are, what their name is, who their family members are, anything, those that survive. That may give some credence to the whole tinfoil hat theory, just so you know. So she says, why do you keep them? Why do you keep the memories? Like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you sucking up everybody's memories and storing them for? He says, I keep them in order to study the deviants. Oh, so it's some sort of a study that's going on, right? This gets into sort of simulation theory, where reality as we experience it is simulated in order to study something, in order to figure something out. And that's what this Titan god, Adisham, is doing. He's keeping the memories in order to study the deviants. I created the deviants, Cersei. So now we learn something else. He also created the deviants, the bad guys, the evil ones, as well as the celestials. I mean, as well as the Eternals. It's easy to confuse the two. The Eternals, the good, were created, and the deviants, the bad, the evil, were created. Did you know it says that in the Bible? The God of the Bible says, I create good and evil. Interesting. I see a lot of correlations. So we go way back to the dawn of the world. And as he says, for the same purpose that I created you, I created the deviants. And you see like these ancient trees and stuff. And then you see some dinosaurs or, you know, whatever they are. And there's these comets that are sort of hitting the earth. It turns out those comets, or whatever they are, the fireballs, are the deviants arriving. And he says every celestial host planet has its own predators. So I sent the deviants to exterminate them so that intelligent life could grow. Why does he want intelligent life to grow? Remember, there is a Titan living and growing in the middle of the earth. And the only way it can emerge or be born is to accumulate more and more energy from intelligent life. It feeds off of our vibes. So the more vibes it has, the quicker the emergence comes. Something to think about. So intelligent life could grow. Now it shows you one of these deviants. Basically, this is a Fantazoid. This is an example of a Fantazoid, some space-type animal, otherworldly creature that falls down, floats down, comes down into our world during the neutral point and ravages things, makes this its new environment. Some might be friendly. Some might be predators. But there was a flaw in the deviant's design. And then you see it sort of sprout some wings and it goes down to attack these people. Now, I'll also point out that there seem to be 2 suns or 2 moons, whatever this is. And he's showing you the Earth. He's showing you, allegedly, our Earth, right? And they're showing you in Hollywood that there used to be more than one light source, either 2 moons or 2 suns, or maybe both. So, what was the flaw? They evolved. They could change. He says they became predators themselves, and I lost control of them. I built and programmed you, the Eternals, to be synthetic beings and incapable of evolution, to correct my mistake. Well, that's pretty interesting to me, because I see all sorts of examples of adaptation and evolution and all of that fun stuff. I don't want to get too deep into it. In the animal world, at least in certain classes of animals, I see that a lot. I'm studying that a lot right now. But not so much in the human department, unless the gods directly intervene. At least that's how the story goes. He goes, do not fail me. Stick to what I told you, basically. So she reports to all her friends, hey man, this is what he told me. And King goes like, so you're saying we're basically fancy robots. And our past memories are stored somewhere in space. Right. It's a lot of information to just take on faith, but she's a part of the family, so they know she wouldn't lie. Sprite starts talking and says, the last time Edisham reset your memories, Thena, something must have gone wrong. All this time, Thena was remembering all the other planets that we were sent to and everyone dying during the emergence. So Thena's not just losing her mind and going crazy. It's that veil of forgetfulness is dissipating from her. She's starting to remember those past lives. She's starting to remember the hidden history that's been kept from her. Gilgamesh says, I thought that we were heroes. It turns out we're the bad guys. It's all relative, right? Polarity. It exists on a pole, on a scale, and it depends on where you are, what you'll call that thing. If you'll see it as good or if you'll see it as bad. She says we have to stop the emergence. So now they decide to be fallen from their god and to go against their creator, who wishes them to encourage the destruction of the world. So this guy starts talking to his human buddy. He says, the world is ending. You need to go home. And this guy's like, and do what? Watch TV? When I could be with the Earth's original superheroes? Right? That's a terrible accent. Right? But he makes a really good point. Like, what am I going to do? This is wisdom speaking right now. What am I going to do? Go home, watch TV, be amused without thought? Like, distract myself? This is usually what, unfortunately, a lot of the world will do when they find out that the world's coming to an end. People tend to revert back to more basic and base ways of life. You know, people in a lot of apocalyptic movies, you'll see that they just want to have sex. Like, before the world ends, let's hurry up and get a quickie in. Like, that's very base. You know what I mean? Let's watch TV. Let's get drunk. Let's party or whatever. Like, that's more base. This guy is speaking from wisdom. He says, what am I going to do? Watch TV? Do something stupid and meaningless? I could be with you. I could be a part of history. I could leave my mark on this world. And that's immensely more important than television. So then we go to the home of Druig. Like I said, the druids are come from the word tree, or deru, or teru, or tree, etc. And here he is in his home amongst the trees. Inside of his house, he even has, as you can see, there's like a blue, is that blue? Yeah, there's a blue line that goes around the border of his house, representing our world. And then a tree growing up out of the middle of where he lives. It's symbolic of the world tree. And then up here in the middle, you see this window? This represents, you see this design a lot, actually, specifically in churches and stuff, but also some other buildings have them. This represents the 4 lands or 4 islands traditionally found at the North Pole, with Mount Meru in the middle, or the plasma volcano in the middle. Now, outside, you see all of a sudden throughout this forest, magical forest, we'll call it, since there's people of magic there, the fog. The fog rolls in, and usually what goes hand in hand with the fog at the apocalypse are Fantazoids. And they start picking up on the vibe, and they say, I don't like this place. This is the magic forest. This is the forest at the middle of the world, essentially, symbolically. So Kingu comes up to Sprite, and he says, have you read Peter Pan? Okay, so to me, Icarus is Peter, Circe is Windy, and you are Tinkerbell for obvious reasons. The rest of us are just the Lost Boys, which I've already touched on, so we'll move on from that. So then Circe talks to her boyfriend. She says, you've always wanted to make amends with your uncle, right? You need to call him up right now. Call him up, make amends. She represents the heart of the world. She does not want the emergence to happen. She wants to postpone or prevent the apocalypse. So what's one of the first things that she does? I don't think she's conscious of it in the movie, but the first thing she does is she reaches out to those she loves and tells them to change their life. To do what you know to do is right. To change the vibration, because it's the vibration, it's the energy from human beings, at least in the Marvel world, that brings about the birth of this celestial that destroys the world. She says, now is the time. Trust me. This movie's talking to us. Now is the time. If you don't want your world to go away, if you enjoy the modern conveniences of life in the age of the gods that we now live in, it's time to change. It's time to raise the vibration. It's time to bring about a balance to all that negativity and all that garbage and hatred and anger and jealousy and spitefulness and all of these lower vibrations that we have in this world, because they're building up and they're accumulating and they're intensifying. And that only leads to one thing. All right, so you see the Fantazoids start coming out of the fog. That's what the Fantazoids usually are shown coming out of the fog. And that's because the world depressurizes and the atmosphere expands quickly, so it turns into fog. All right, so then Thena, because the Fantazoids are there, because there's anger and violence and Fantazoids and stuff, she becomes plasma possessed. Right? You got the fog, you got the Fantazoids, and you've got plasma possession, where she starts to turn on her friends. She has an inner struggle that she's going through right now. The Bible warns people not to be lukewarm, but to be hot or cold, because eventually the tipping point comes in time, and whatever you are more of, the plasma possession amplifies that, so that you solidly become whatever you mostly are deep down inside. All right, so anyways, Circe touches a tree. This is kind of hard. It's kind of dark. Sorry about that. She touches a tree, changes the wood into metal, right? She petrifies the tree, essentially. And it falls down on top of the Fantazoid. This is all really dark, isn't it? So he loves on her to get her to stop being plasma possessed. And then the Superman-like guy, Icarus, he shoots down into the mouth of this Fantazoid in order to kill it. This is pretty symbolic. I believe that we get these tips on how to survive after the apocalypse, because some of us are going to have to deal with Fantazoids, right? Good ones, intermediate, and the bad, all alike. So what's one way that you can kill them? Well, there stories and legends talk about how the Fantazoids have just the toughest skin. They have like an exoskeleton almost. You can't really shoot bullets or stab them or whatever. You have to learn the different ways to kill them. This is giving you a tip for those of you who survive. The inside of their mouth. And in many movies, the bad guy is only killed from the inside. Either a character has to jump into it and then explode it from the inside, or stab it, or shoot beams into its mouth, or stuff like that, right? So they're giving you a tip on how to survive the Fantazoids in the post-apocalyptic world. One of the Fantazoids jumps into the water with Circe, where she touches its face and transforms it. You can't see it here, but it's a tree. She turns it into a tree. Let's see. Then we've got this Fantazoid that's the leader of them, and basically he's got these plasma tentacles that he can use to suck out their spirit. He takes a piece of them or their power into himself, and now he inherits their powers, and it helps him to change and to become stronger. As you can see here, he's starting to morph into something else. He is a shapeshifter, and they represent the shapeshifters. So he says, I can see what Ajax saw. Ajax's ability is to heal, so he just inherited the healing ability. Now, Ajax was the first one to die. So I also want to say symbolically, the closer we get to the apocalypse, all of these characters who die in the movie represent, to me, they represent the things that start dying off in our world, the things that we start missing, right? So like the ability to regenerate or to heal, right? To live long lives and stuff is one of the first things to go, which is what Ajax represented. And that's why we have tiny lifespans. That's why we don't have regenerative powers like we used to. He says, so many planets, so much life destroyed. Every time a celestial is born, Ereshkigal used us and left us to die with each emergence. So now he's pissed off at this godlike being called Ereshkigal because he realizes he's just being used. He's taking this personally. He's not looking at the higher level like Ereshkigal, explained to everybody. He says, we just wanted to survive, right? Survival of the fittest, Darwin, all that type of stuff. Not that I believe in all of those teachings. I'm just saying the movie is presenting this, right? He says, I will kill you all for what you have done to my kind. Now, if his kind represents ancient Fantazoid creatures or alien animals that landed here in our world and then evolved very quickly and changed into, I don't know, modern animals that we have today that look very much like aliens. Like, I just did a video about the elephants. You could also check out the axolotl. You could look at the tardigrades. You could look at dolphins. There's all these weird, strange-looking creatures that just look otherworldly. Irregular absolution. Hey, thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Appreciate it. All right, so he says, I will destroy you all for what you have done to my kind. Well, if he's speaking to us, if he's speaking to humanity, what have we done to the animal races? How do we treat our fellow creatures in this world, the animals? If that's what he represents, right? Imagine this is speaking right to the heart of humanity. He's pissed, and he represents all of the different races of animals in our world today. I'm just going to, say or assume. And he says, I will kill you all for what you've done to my kind. You are not heroes. You are murderers. And guess what? That's a hard pill for many of us to swallow, right? You're used to going to the store, buying hot dogs and chicken wings and hamburgers and stuff. But in reality, you're buying chopped up dead animals. You're buying dead bird, murdered bird, right? I'm not trying to, make anybody feel bad or anything. I'm just saying we should have feelings, but we don't because we dissociate ourselves with the reality of what's happening. The reality of what we're a part of, the reality of the world that we live in today. Imagine if all that reality changed suddenly, and all of a sudden you could speak with animals, and they could speak with you through telepathy. Let's just say. I imagine we'd have a lot more vegetarians in the world, including myself. All right, not to harp on that too much, let's move forward. They say these deviants are trying to keep us from killing their own kind. Oh no. They have a conscience now. Now, in this world, one of the reasons that I've been told that many people don't feel bad about killing animals is because many people don't believe that animals have a conscience. I don't know where that came from, but that's actually something that people believe. She says they have a conscience now. That makes them more dangerous. And this dude is like, no, Cersei. That makes them us. Right? You wouldn't kill and eat a member of your own family, hopefully. So why do that to one of our friend creatures? They're our friends. They're just like us. They have a conscience. They have a spirit. They have life. I don't know. All right, so then we go to August 1945, Hiroshima. This is the whole atomic bomb theory, where the city was blown up or whatever. Whether or not it's real and nuclear, all that stuff, I'm not going to get into right now, but the movie is portraying it as if it is. So they show the city just devastated in Japan. And Hephaestus, is sitting there and he's just grieving. He's terribly sad. He says, if my technology hadn't helped them to advance, these people, they're not worth saving. They're not worth saving. And he's just brokenhearted because he sees them all and he's like, man, that's all they do. They're just inclined to evil. They just hurt one another. They kill each other off. They eat the animals. They do all of this stuff. I mean, I'm speaking for him right now, but he says it again. They're not worth saving. He had such faith in humanity, but then he sees the levels that we rise to when we abuse the information that we're given, where we abuse the technology, where we abuse our power, where we don't add to the world any longer. Collectively, we just take away. And it breaks his heart. It just kills him. His whole purpose has been to help humanity. He loves and can't wait for the day to see them grow. Now, his son, we go into his room and you can see his son, his son's name is Jake, or Jacob, right? Someone who will replace someone else, indicating that his son is a survivor of this apocalyptic event, right? Chosen, or inevitably will be somebody who survives the apocalyptic event and replaces the old world of humanity. And he becomes a new citizen of the new era or world or whatever. And right above him, you can see the moon. It's the moonchild symbolism, right? And the moon being the sister world. And he's got all this Star Wars stuff. He wants to go to other planets and other worlds. He believes in the fantastic. This is the indigo children of our world today. This is those of us who still have a creative, childlike mindset, which we need to enter into that new world, to be balanced. You don't want to bring the garbage of the old world into the new world that's nice and tidy and clean, right? So they show you the moon symbolism. Then their ship comes back up out of the ground. As you can see, it's Rupus Negra, or the unfinished Black Pyramid. Comes up out of the ground, but behind it you can see the remains of Babylon, that city, because remember it was down in the basement of Babylon. Basically it's all been buried in dirt. Lots of dirt, buried Babylon. Now did the dirt just come in over dust over millions of years, or is it that Babylon sank? Remember, there was worldwide earthquakes creating liquefaction, and all these heavy items sank down. Whatever was on the surface went down into the earth. Whatever was buried down into the earth rose up, which is how liquefaction typically works. Now, they're inside of the ship. He says, is that a sarcophagus in my lab? It shows, what's her name? Makari? Man, I forgot. But it shows the super fast girl. Remember, she's the one who represents Mercury. And she's just been stealing stuff, all these artifacts over time. So you see all these cool artifacts in there. It's kind of dark, so you can't make out a lot of them. As you can see, here's the knight's armor, which I was talking about. They put this on to keep from being electrocuted, first and foremost, which is why it's made of metal, but also to protect themselves while they were fighting these Fantazoids. The humans needed to, right? So this is really funny. This is actually a scene where you see Icarus. He's holding the emerald tablet of Thoth, or Hermes, if you like. And then we've got Druig, who's holding some Twinkies, and they want to change them up. Now it's funny because in the background, the guy's talking to the super fast girl, Makari, and he's like, "Man, have you seen my movies?" She's like, "No." He's like, she's like, "I don't have a DVD player." And he's like, "Oh, DVD player? You need like a Kindle, you know?" And then he's like, he's basically telling her she needs to get a tablet. And they're in the background arguing over a super powerful artifact that happens to be a tablet. He says, so how did you end up scarring this emerald tablet? Interesting, because she represents Mercury. Now, the equivalent of Mercury is Hermes, right? Who's also sometimes called Thoth. So that's why she has that emerald tablet. It's literally hers. Or at least it should be, according to the history. Here's a picture of the emerald tablet, in case you thought it was just made-up fiction that appears in movies. It's not. It's real. There are stories about it. Historic scriptures and writings that talk about the esoteric writings of Hermes, or Hermes Trismegistus, etc. I highly recommend reading the story that's been transcribed or translated from the emerald tablets. It's very interesting. I might share that one day myself. All right, so Phastos starts talking. Phastos is the Vulcan. He's the creator that makes all the cool stuff for the gods and for humanity. Phastos says, so here's a little Celestial 101. Also, as a heads up, I'm going to do a video on the 101 and what I believe that means. He says, Celestials are the most powerful. When Erisham made us, he imbued us with infinite cosmic energy. So, you imagine This represents the plasma either around our world or coming up from within, right? That are these titans and gods of old. And these beings that live forever, the Eternals, are imbued with cosmic energy. I call cosmic energy plasma. To keep our bodies regenerating. So the bodies keep regenerating. This is living over and over and over so that they can be immortal, essentially, right? The bracelets, in theory, he's making these bracelets, shut down our regeneration process. And once that happens, our bodies accumulate extra cosmic energy. So let me translate that into the modern world and make it relative to how we live in our world today and to our history that's been hidden from us. He's talking about these rings or bracelets, these circles, right? When the circles appear, or when they put on these circles or these rings or whatever, bracelets, basically they don't get to live forever anymore, but they get extra powerful. Interesting, right? So, okay, I'm not going to go to the next slide. I'm trying to piece this all together in my mind so that it makes sense to everyone. Essentially, there is a ring, or there are rings that we see up in the sky when the world depressurizes, creates a circle up in the way upper atmosphere, okay? Those are the bracelets that I believe he's referring to symbolically. When those bracelets or rings appear, it stops this process of reincarnation for a time. It stops it. And why is that? That's because people don't die. At least when the blue beam shoots up and appears during the emergence, there's a time of no death, which is alluded to in various religions, right? So they lose their ability to regenerate or reincarnate, and they become more mortal, but also extra powerful. There might be some more to that as well, but I don't want to get too deep into it. Let's continue. He says, if the deviants can absorb our energy, imagine what he's saying right now comes from the queen or the president or someone like that. Just imagine. If the deviants can absorb our energy, what if we can absorb each other's energy as well? If I can find a way to connect us all, one of us could become immensely powerful. Now, let me read that one more time a bit quicker. Imagine that he is one of your world rulers. Okay? If the deviants can absorb our energy, what if we could absorb each other's energy? If I can find a way to connect us all. Let's just say this is Mark Zuckerberg talking. If I can find a way to connect us all, one of us could become immensely powerful. Could you see some of these truths, these nuggets of truth that they're sharing with us about our own governments, our own worlds, our own orders and systems that we live under? I can. So, pulling the accumulated energy from the rest and forming the unimind. Now, it's interesting to me because this unimind looks like a couple of different things. One, it looks like a neuron in the brain. Looks like a cell. Essentially, it has a sort of a cellular structure or a neuron structure with dendrites and stuff sticking out of it, which is the macrocosmic, way out there, huge version of the heavens. Okay, many of those all connected, and that forms a sort of a world tree or whatever. But then it also has the symbolism of the eye in the sky and the plasma coming out of that hole up in the sky and docking to the earth, coming down towards the earth as well. That is Grandmother Spider, as the Native Americans would call her. A unimind, one mind, right? That's ultimately the objective of both sides. The good all want to be of one mind. They all want everyone to believe what they believe and come to the truth and etc. The bad also want the exact same thing. Interesting how they put it up there. That's also why I like the jellyfish symbolism and stuff like that too, because it kind of takes that appearance. The mushroom world and stuff, right? So now we have Icarus and Kingu together in a hallway, and he says, I will follow you to the end like I always have. And Icarus says, I am not who you think I am. Now, why am I talking about that? Because Icarus is basically a sort of Superman type figure. Superman is a bad guy. I'm just going to say it. Like, he does not come across to me as a good guy. at all. He might do some good things, but in general, that dude is plasma possessed, right? I don't know if you've seen all the different DC movies about Superman or whatever, but basically they imply that Superman ends up taking over the world and has an army of Fantazoids at his disposal, and he gets really pissed. So does Icarus. The only time that he seems to be able to shoot that laser beam from his eyeballs is when he is angry. And you'll see that later on. So now, Icarus takes Cersei to this ice, and there's all these little Fantazoids walking around on the ice, and he says they must have been trapped in the ice for centuries. Interesting, because I just did that video about the woolly mammoths that were trapped in the ice or whatever, and there's also a lot of different movies that imply that there's some sort of otherworldly monsters that are just behind an ice wall, or just behind some sort of ice barrier, and if that ice melts or cracks or breaks, those monsters are loosed upon the world. He says when the glacier started to melt, that's when these monsters started to appear. As the Earth's core heats up for the emergence. Oh, that's why the glaciers are melting, because the Earth's core, which has all that plasma inside of it, which is just a little baby titan or baby god or whatever that's growing, which will be emerging and causing the apocalypse, is located inside. So the closer that you get in the Marvel universe to the end of the world, the closer you get to the apocalypse, the more you have evidence that the Earth is heating up, at least from the inside, right? And we're going to see that in the form of these volcanoes in just a bit. And then all of a sudden, these strange creatures start showing up around the world too. So he throws her down there, Superman, essentially. Icarus throws her down there, and this leader of the Fantazoids uses this sort of plasma tentacle looking things and sucks her power out, and she dies, right? Sucks her soul out. It starts to absorb her soul. Just like, I don't know, just allegedly some people in the world are able to do that, to eat other people's soul, to try to stay young or to gain more power or whatever it may be. So this one's pretty dark, but it's the leader of the Fantazoids, and he reverses it. He shoots his little tentacles into the other Fantazoids, and they evolve and they change. So it's interesting. I wanted to show you that one, but it's really hard to see. All these Fantazoids look like what I call devil dogs, right? Many of these creatures start off with one form. They sort of look dog-like on 4 legs and run about. At least certain classes of them do, right? But over time, they start to evolve and change and adapt to their environment. Now, we see the volcano. There's a lot of volcano symbolism. This coincides with recent events in our world, where volcanoes are going off left and right. In the past few decades, more and more volcanoes are going off. More powerful volcano explosions are happening. And in the Marvel world, they would say that that is a harbinger or an omen of what is to come, which is the emergence, which is the worldwide reset. So Icarus and Sprite go off to this volcano. Now, I believe that this is symbolic of Rupus Negra, or Mount Meru, the world volcano, right, that sits in the middle of the world. And then the volcano starts to erupt. It goes off. Boom. That means that's a sign that the emergence is near. Okay. So what are the movies telling us? They're sharing breadcrumbs saying, hey, when volcanoes start erupting all over the place, the emergence is near. All right, so volcano blows up. This leader of the Fantazoids, he's evolved into more of a human-type shape, and then he tricks her. Remember, he's a shapeshifter, too, so he pretends to be somebody that he's not. He pretends right here to be her dead friend, Gilgamesh, who he has already killed. So he says, stay here. Now, Athena, or Athena, the goddess of wisdom, also represents the blue beam that shoots up from within the world under the plasma volcano. They are under the volcano in the movie right now. He says, stay here. He wants Athena, or whatever, the goddess of wisdom, the blue beam, to stay down here. Don't come up. Don't emerge. Pardon me. All right, anyways, they go through a battle. She ends up killing him, which was awesome. She totally cuts him into pieces. And then they show you these tidal waves that happen. So tidal waves are also an omen of the emergence happening, both in our world and the Marvel universe. Then you've got this Titan starting to be born up out of the world. Like we talked about, the Titans are said to be kept within the underworld. Now, if you look at this, this could just look like some islands or whatever, but it's fingers of a titan coming up out of the ground, reaching up from the waters, right? The titans in reverse, this is the titans emerging from the way that they died. They drowned. According to historic legends and records, the titans sank. Some of them were petrified. Some of them changed into rock because of the electrical bonding and stuff that happens when the plasma shocks them or whatever. But they also sank. They're so massive that when the liquefaction happens and the world's shaking like that, all that water mixes and turns into quicksand, and all the titans can't go anywhere but down. So they sink down into the earth. And we have a lot of that in our pop culture and our art. There's statues around the world, just huge, massive statues of like giant hands, like reaching up from the ground, or huge heads coming up out of the water. We have all of that type of artistry in our world. As you can see, it's showing the Titan starting to emerge from the ocean, coming up out of the ground. And there you can see its palm of its hand holding the island right there. I also think that's really interesting because if that island represents Mount Meru and the northern lands of Hyperborea and whatnot, I believe that some legends indicate that there are these pillars on either side, or maybe even surrounding that land, these pillars of earth that seem to have just been pulled up. I believe that they're also referred to as the pillars of Heracles or Hercules. Anyway, what else do we got? So the Titans coming up. Circe, the sorceress, the one who taps into the source, she can manipulate and rearrange things at a genetic level, right? She uses the source to change something into something else. So she puts her hands on the Titan that she is standing on, and all of a sudden it starts to change from gold to rock. She petrifies the Titan. Why is that so cool? Because that's what the legends all say across time. That the Titans, that the ogres, that the giants, that all these immense, huge beings turned into stone. That they were petrified instantly by some sort of ancient petrification weapon. Medusa, all of these things, the Gorgons and stuff, they talk about and they reference this all of the time. That we once had beings of immense size that turned into rock or stone and nowadays are considered just a part of the landscape. So the movie harkens back to this ancient story, and it shows the Titan Tiamat. Now, this Superman like Icarus dude, he lands right next to her and he's trying to stop her. He's very left-brained. Remember how I was talking about that, wearing the blue and the blue sky and stuff? Anyways, he wants to stop her. He's about to light up his eyes and whoosh, destroy her. And his eyes start to light up, but then they fizzle out. He can't. Why can't he? He's crying. He's showing this emotion. He has remorse. He can't use the laser beam eyes when he's happy. All he sees when he looks at her, at Circe, is his lover, somebody that he cares deeply about. So he can't light up the eyes. Interesting, right? All right, so then all of a sudden the immortals start to float. They get sucked up into the sky. Boom, you can see them all. This is all a part of plasma apocalypse symbolism when there's... I don't know if there's zero gravity, but at the very least, I would say there's a lessened gravitational pull, right? And things start to float, right? Anything that jumps up a little bit will basically just float up into the air. And this is symbolic of that as well. Then you've got the hand of the Titan reaching up, shooting past the clouds and starting to close. But as you can see, it's hardening because it's turning into rock. Right here, it's rock. Right there, it's gold. It's becoming completely petrified. And this is during this apocalyptic event, right? Volcanoes are going off. Tidal waves are all over the place. This is an apocalyptic event, and they're showing us what may have happened in our old world. Now, they're cartoonifying it a bit, but the truth, nonetheless, as the Titan turns to stone. Now, she has all of this plasma that's wrapped around her, and this is a zoomed out version of the Titan. Now, in the Marvel world, people will over time, they'll forget all about this. They're just going to think that this is a part of, that's a mountain over there. That's just a part of the landscape. I don't know why it's shaped at an angle like that, but that's just the way it's always been. It's just a rock. It's just a mountain. Okay. Or it's a gigantic petrified sentient being. It's up to you. All right, so here it is, completely petrified. And how do I know it's rock? How do I know it's petrified? Because they say that in the movie. I'll show you in a bit. So Icarus is just filled with grief. He can't believe that he's tried to help this thing. He can't believe that he chose the wrong thing. So he flies way out into space, or whatever you want to call it, and he heads towards the sun. Basically, he's committing suicide, it looks like. He goes right into the sun, and that's that time you see Icarus. So he holds true to his name. Names are very important in the world that we live in today, and he fulfilled his destiny for being Icarus, flying too close to the sun. So she says, he's like, how did you do that? How did you just petrify this Titan, right? The movies are going to tell us how it's done. She says, when I touched Tiamat's palm, I felt energy surging into me. So it's energetic. We learned that right away. He says, I always wondered how we survived the destruction of other planets that we were on. Oh, well, interesting. Please tell me. We're listening, right? Enlightened minds want to know how to survive the apocalypse. By being connected to the celestial as it emerged. So, where do you have to be connected to the celestial as it emerges? The emergence happens at the middle of the world, at the North Pole. That's where you would have to be to survive, to guarantee survival, I would say. She says, we became one, even Icarus and Sprite, all because of Tiamat, all because of that emergence that happened, right? The world tree that grows up out of the middle of the world, that pillar, that blue beam that shoots up, the light that shoots up, causes all beings, or many, there's always exception, to become one. It connects us. It improves us. All right, that's all I say about that. So she's talking to Sprite. Sprite's the one that's basically eternally a child because her growth process is extremely slow, just like the ancient elven race. And she says, Cersei's talking to her, and she says, I think I can make you human. Essentially, she's saying, I think I can make you mortal. I think I can make it so that you will age and die just like these humans do. Well, that's interesting she says that right after the apocalypse. Because that's when the world, okay, one apocalypse, one uncovering of our world, one reset, causes us to grow larger. The world depressurizes, the gravitational pull is lessened, and it causes us to grow and thrive. All these new chemicals are introduced, more oxygen, etc., causes us to live a very long time. But then the other apocalypse takes it all away. The pressure starts to build. The gravitational pull is restored, and lifespans shrink. So these are the gods. They enter into our world. They go from being immortal to going to sharing conditions that we have, which means they start to age. She says, but your time will be fleeting and you'll die one day. And there's the immortals all together on the beach. Now the television says the sudden appearance of an enormous stone figure in the Indian Ocean. Oh, that's how we know that it was petrified. It says right there, it was turned into stone. All right, so this little kid, Phaestos' son, says, Dad said that you're the goddess Athena. Now, this is really interesting that they put this into the movie. Athena is like, it's Thena. Drop the A. So that's talking to us. Whenever we think of Athens and Athena, the goddess or whatever, she says to drop the A. Why? Because it means without, right? She's helping you etymologically to learn how words and their origins and their meanings. She's like, no, drop the A. Thena, thought, the goddess of wisdom, not the goddess of amusement, the goddess of wisdom. You think when we find the other elementals out there that they'll accept the truth the way that we did? So now what they're going to do is they're going to leave the earth. Some of them are going to leave here, and they want to go to other worlds and share this information to stop the emergence, to stop the apocalypse, right? To postpone it, and how it happens and stuff with the other elementals who have their memories wiped, who don't remember what's going on or what their true purposes are. They want to go out there and be rebellious out there in the heavens or space and share this information with others of their kind. He says, do you think that they'll accept the truth? She says they will, because the truth will set them free. The truth will set them free. Then we go out to Cersei, who's talking to her boyfriend, when all of a sudden, thunder. They look off into the distance, and these clouds start appearing out of nowhere. It was a blue sky, but these clouds start to appear, right? This is symbolic, and they're showing you a little mini version of the plasma apocalypse, right? What happens is the world depressurizes. There's a loud bang. There's a loud noise. All of a sudden, there's clouds everywhere. And then even lower down, it turns into fog everywhere because of the expanding atmosphere, right? They show you this in the movie, and it starts to get dark, and it starts to become like dark clouds all over the place. And then those clouds split apart, just like the sky opening up. And then just on the other side of our sky, you see, what was his name? Arishim, right? Arishim. And his 6 eyeballs or 6 lights or whatever. As the sky splits open, you can see. And then all of a sudden, she gets sucked up into the sky. This is like a little tiny mini plasma apocalypse. They're like, in case you didn't get the rest of the movie, here it is in a nutshell, right? Then she gets sucked up into the sky as the world's depressurized, or symbolically, right? And disappears as she got sucked up to her god, to Arishim, and she meets with him in the sky. So he's holding on to her in the palm of his hand, and he says, "You have chosen to sacrifice a celestial for the people of this planet. I will spare them, but your memories will show if they are worthy to live, and I will return for judgment." Boom. Your memories. It's talking to us. Your memories will determine whether or not judgment comes to this world, right? It's our vibrations. We're the ones who determine if we have an apocalypse or if we don't. I also want to point out that this movie is basically saying that the reason why this creature, who's sort of seen as kind of maybe a bad guy, but, you know, on deeper levels, maybe he's got a plan, maybe not, you know, why he wants to control the world's population, why he wants it to increase and increase so that he can return and judge everybody, so that the sky can open up, because he needs enough energy accumulated so that it will pop our atmosphere, the world depressurizes, and we go through an apocalyptic scenario. Now, the heroes don't want that. The heroes want to keep the population low, because the lower the population, the less they can feed energy to the titans that grow inside of the world, which means they postpone the apocalypse. In the Marvel movies, whenever Thanos eradicated half of the population everywhere, that actually is alluded to in this movie, and it says that it postponed the emergence because there was less people. Some people get upset because the Georgia Guidestones talk about controlling the population and keeping the population to a limit, to a low amount. Why? Maybe this is why. So he says he will return for judgment, and then he disappears into a red ring in space, or in the sky, right? That's because Arishim is the light of the world around us. It's the plasma or plasmasphere that wraps around our world. That's why he's always seen as just on the other side, peeking into the earth, right? Because he is just on the other side of the world, or of the sky. And that, my friends, is the movie The Eternals. But we've got some post-credits as well. So Eros, one of the gods. Eros is essentially Cupid, if you're not familiar with all of the gods. He's the god of love. He shows up on their ship. Remember, some of them left to go like warn all the other Eternals? He shows up on their ship and he's like, "Hey, your friends are in danger. Good news is, I know how to help them out and I know where they are." He says, "Your friends are in big trouble." That's his little, I forgot what that guy is. Dwarf or something? I forgot. He says, "I know where to find them. The Eternals will return." So not only does it give you a little like cliffhanger and say, hey, we're going to make another movie, they're also telling you the gods will return. They always promise to, right? They leave, some of them, right? Some of them blast off, they leave, they go back out into space. They sort of dip out during the apocalypse and all the bad parts, and they always promise to come back. They always promise to return. And those are the Eternals. Okay, that was pretty much it. Yeah, what'd you guys think? I was not in the chat for most of that. I hope that the breakdown was awesome. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you got some sort of tidbit of something of value that you can add to the Rolodex of your mind. something useful that might help you out in the future, even if it's just informative. I encourage you, when you watch these movies, allow yourself times to just get lost, to be grounded, to just lose yourself in the illusion. But don't be lost in the illusion, and realize and pick up on the fact that these movies are telling you your very own story. So it might be more helpful for us to not take them for granted and to see ourselves in the movies that we watch. If you haven't had time, go check out my new video that I did about the elephants, space elephants, whatever. I don't know what I called it. And I love you guys. I'm going to go ahead and roll the credits. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.